goddess of a woman is, I was just like starstruck by you, and I didn't even know who you were. You just have this effortless ease about you that makes everyone feel so warm and so included, and so, like, you know when you walk into a class and you're like, you know it's going to be good, you like, you just feel it, feel the vibe. I just was like, oh my god, you're amazing. So anyway, there's my little like fangirl Charlotte. Yes. So I took her classes and they were based around the chakras. And at this stage, I hadn't been teaching yoga for very long. So it was all very, very new to me. And the way that Charlotte weaves your psychology perspective or background into your classes, the way that you balance like the spiritual with the more intellectual, scientific sort of things, the way she brings everything together into like this holistic approach to moving your body, to paying attention to your mind, and to inviting you to inquire deeper into your body and mind to find out your whys, was just mind-blowing for me. And your classes are some of the best I have ever taken. So to be able to talk to you and to get a little bit of an insight into, you know, your knowledge and your wisdom and your perspective and your insight is so valuable. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Nikki. And what an homage you give me there. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to live up to it today. I just actually wanted to mention as well, because I was thinking about this before we started. I was thinking about how we met, and I don't know if you remember, but I remember very clearly the very first time we met. I was supposed to teach a class. It was a very rainy Friday afternoon, and there was only one person that showed up for the class, and that was Nikki. And we had never met before, and I did not know that you were a yoga teacher. And was I surprised when this super fit Australian girl with the enormous smile just did everything that I did in the class as if it was nothing. And I was thinking to myself, how am I going to challenge this girl? Because no matter what I'm doing, she's just doing it with such ease. You were so strong and flexible and just kept smiling no matter what I threw at you. So I remember that very clearly. And after class, I remember that we chatted, and that's when you told me that you were teaching as well. And then I thought, oh, well, that explains it. So you know, I was definitely impressed.
Well, it goes absolutely both ways, because while my physical practice might have been strong, my inner practice was definitely not strong. So I have gotten value after value after value from hearing your words, from practicing your sequences, from reading what you write. Yeah, I might have had a flexible, strong flow back then, 5 or 6 years ago. So, but it was definitely, yeah, what you were able to offer in your classes to make my mind think in a different way, and to is it not be so proud or egotistic, and to actually step back and go, maybe this is why this isn't working for me in my life, because of this blockage or because of this past experience. Or so you were the first one that was able, I guess, break through that barrier of not, it's, you know, when you're sort of in that mindset of I'm doing everything in like in a victim mode, or in a I'm already doing it, there's no more work I need to do. You were the first one that was able to sort of show me how to access those deeper layers within you if I really wanted to have personal growth, and if I really wanted to heal old wounds. And now it's been so helpful for me for my current traumas and things. So yeah, to be able to weave that in to a yoga practice is a gift, an absolute gift, because I feel like a lot of people either like shun yoga. They can, because like, oh, yoga, it's got nothing to offer me, or what's moving my body going to do, or people come to yoga thinking that it's just a fitness regime, so it's only for the outer body. But the way that you can merge both together to benefit people, so it's like a bonus that you're getting the physical exercise, but what you're really offering people is the inner work. And I feel like that is super important. And then yeah, just the way that you explain it, and coming from your background, I feel like is pretty unique and very special.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think actually that the way that most of us approach the yogic practice is really just, you know, it's a symptom of the time that we live in as well. And I think that if you look at the history, and let's say, because there's no specific time dating yoga, but a lot of scriptures would have it that it has about 5,000 years of history, right? And so the reason that yoga, if we would even look at like what was the first yogis, and you know, how did this even happen, and we would then take it into today, because actually it has a place in time, in each time of humanity, and it will be probably looking different because it will be a symptom of the time that we are in. So what I mean by that is that the very first yogis, what did they do? It was actually people who decided, they saw where society was going, because it was already obviously societies created, and they withdrew from that. They decided to retreat into the mountains, into the forests, because they did not see that what we were heading towards was maybe the right direction. And so they retreated back and they started looking within. And the whole thing about the physical practice is something, of course, that came much later, because truly what it was, yoga, that everyone knows these days, means union, is this fact of actually in a certain way coming back to something. So coming back to something that was already a truth of wholeness, of oneness, that we have dissociated from as we went into life and into society. And so they withdrew from that. And then they started, actually, it was really just meditation, right? A seated meditation. So the different yogic postures that were used in the beginning are only really there to help the body to open up so that you can sit undisturbed for hours in meditation. And which is the reason as well that if you look into one of the most famous scriptures on yoga, which are the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the asanas, or the physical practice, is mentioned very, very rarely, and is more mentioned as sthira sukham asanam. So seated and well posed. Now I can't find the words, obviously, because now we're live, but basically being still and relaxed and calm in a pose. That's actually what the poses are supposed to do. And so naturally, when we look at how yoga has evolved, we can also see the different turns that it's been taken, but it also has been each time a symptom of what society is projecting into the world at that time. And so we could even look into, you know, when the Brits took over India, and then they would find these yogis, right, who were really almost like, for us as Westerners, circus people, you know, they would do these incredible things with their bodies, or even like stick a knife into their body without it bleeding because of their capacities with the mind. And so these yogis were brought back to the West, but almost a little bit as a way of like a trophy, you know, to show what they can do. And then yoga took a completely different, you know, turn in those times. And so then if we look at into what yoga is today and the world that we look in today, it isn't so strange that we are so focused on having the perfect physical practice today, that's what we focus on, and that's what brings us to yoga most of the time. And the thing is, I think what's really essential, like everything else, if we can just take the time to come back basically to the source a little bit, you know what I mean? Like understand the basis of things, then we can take our yoga in any way that we want, you know, but understand where it's coming from, just like with yourself.
And you do that so incredibly well, because it's like our practice is then a reflection of our external life, or life off the mat, isn't it? So if we're coming to yoga for the perfect practice, to create the most elaborate shapes that we possibly can, with absolutely no like integrity to balance it with the mind, or to look internally, like if it's just there as a performance sort of, and it's all about the exterior, then that's what sort of translates to the rest of our life, doesn't it? That's how we flow on and we start living, like, so long as it looks good on the outside, don't worry what's going on the inside. And by not, I guess, focusing on that, we create this falsity or this false life. And then we're wearing, you know, what people call masks after masks, that we get so disconnected from who we are and our values, our morals, that life can be over very, very quickly. And we have spent the whole time just performing and trying to look good on the outside rather than doing the inner work, or you know, focusing on what's really important. And I feel like that's your perspective with yoga, with energy, in relation to the chakras. It ties in so perfectly, because while people are making these shapes with their bodies, while they're flowing, while they are sweating, it's still reminding us what the important part of yoga is and why we come to the mat, so that we can process and that we can look, you know, in with awareness and curiosity and acknowledgement, so that we can either learn from our, I'm so sorry, I thought he'd
No,
be
don't
quiet.
be.
So we can either learn from our past and what behaviors or personality we have associated with. Sorry,
Oh,
we will see.
well, it's
But
lunchtime.
it is lunchtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that's where your teachings and your background in psychology is so powerful on, you know, like with why we store emotions, or how we store emotions in our body, and what is the repercussions if we don't process them or we don't acknowledge them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I think that, so if I should say a few words on this, I think that when I first started teaching, I came to encounter the whole aspect of the subtle body, which is what we talk about when we talk about the energy and the chakra system. And so when you look into the subtle body, for us as Westerners, what we could also translate that into is thoughts and emotions, right? And so basically, our physical body is the manifestation of all the other parts of ourselves. So we have a tendency, of course, to make this difference between the body and the mind, but we can very easily see how there's not really a difference between the body and the mind, because we can even just imagine things, and then we feel the physical effect of those things that we imagine, even if they're not happening right now. Like you have the typical situation of you know, just imagining eating your favorite food, and you're imagining it very, very strongly, and you will begin to feel saliva coming into your mouth, even though you're not having any food in your mouth, right? So the link between the mind and the physical sense is very obvious, but we never really connect that way because that's not what we've been taught. And so if you would go into the idea that the physical body then becomes this manifested part of all the rest of you, it will be natural to understand that when you begin to move around this physical part of you, then things will happen. Things will pop up to the surface, let's say, of the more subtle things. So just imagine, well, look at Jimmy there. So look at a little baby. A little baby basically have no blockages, right? They're so flexible and subtle and moving, okay? Because for the moment, they haven't really had experiences that will crystallize into blockages in their body. So if we would imagine that anything that happens in our life, everything around us is energy, then everything that happens in our life, every experience that we have, every thought that we have, is all charged, right? It's charged with energy. So it goes through our system as we experience these things, and everything leaves a trace, okay? You might not remember it mentally, but everything leaves a trace. Let's say even that you are different today just because of the kind of food you had last night. You know what I mean? So as everything leaves traces, there's experiences that we have as we start out in life, especially because we're so new to everything, right? That leaves traces that were uncomfortable for us. When we, let's say when we come into a new knowledge that goes against maybe what we know to be true for ourselves, then that creates this charge that stays inside of us, and it becomes like a blockage. And this is the reason, of course, that later on when we do things, let's say, for instance, the hips is a very typical side, right, where we get a lot of blockages. And it's linked to these experiences that we have had in childhood, because then they create, they create a pattern in your body. So basically, let's say that you have experiences that all get blocked around in your legs and movement and all of that, and you just feel quite stuck in your body, then that creates a pattern for you. So you will just adapt into how your body builds up, and then you will begin to move around that way. And if society is also teaching us, for instance, that we should sit on a chair for about 8 hours a day, then that's not going to help us. So then we build up this personality around this armor, really, that the body becomes. And so naturally, when we then begin to go in and to counter that, to bend open, to push and to hold, then we begin to release a little bit of those tensions. Now, what are those tensions? Okay, the experiences that we have that becomes blockages in the body, what happens is that we encounter something most usually painful in some way. And this pain, as human beings with our survival instinct, we don't want to feel. So what do we do with things that we don't want to feel? Well, we numb it off. The less it can feel alive, the more we can also pretend that it's not there and we don't have to deal with it, right? And so it becomes actually almost like dead parts in the body, which is why there's a lot of people, many, especially those who never practice yoga, who don't even know how to feel their body. If you sit someone down who's not used to it and you tell them, close your eyes, go into meditation and feel into your left foot, they will most probably, almost all of them certain, open their eyes and look at their left foot, because they don't know what it means to feel the foot. They know what it means to look at it, to move it, but just to feel into it, that's such a strange concept to a lot of people. Because what we do is they just...
Mind blowing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we live in our bodies all day, every day, yet we are so disconnected from them and unaware of what has built up over time, and that every thought, that every exchange, that every action, every experience is energy, be positively charged or negatively charged, and it's what has created us into who we are today. And to strip that all back, so amazing. Please go on, please.
Yeah, and so just like any other pattern that we have, what happens is that when we are made into this body, and then we experience things that build up also the posture that we will hold due to the blockages. And then, of course, as we want to just flow with life, we will actually adapt into what the body has become. So what I mean by that is take someone who's experienced, for instance, a lot of challenging things very early on in life, and who will build up a strong armor in their body to protect themselves, right? So build up these tensions and the blockages and hold themselves this way, Look at a child. You tell a child to concentrate. What do? Yeah. That's what they do, right? Because what does it mean to concentrate? They can only tense up. And so take a person who's done that and never been, asked to not be themselves. They will then create a life, which means they will create a pattern of behaviors that will become a habit because they do it over and over again. And they will just go in the lines of what this physical body is asking them to do. So it means that we are so used to, and how could we ever experience something different to that if we keep repeating those same patterns?
We become so unconscious to it. It's just, we say it's just who we are. Or am I frozen? I hope Charlotte's not frozen for you guys. It's frozen on my end, but it might just be re-establishing. Hopefully we'll find the connection back again. Hopefully it's just on my end and you guys can still hear Charlotte, but Isn't that incredible, right? Like, so powerful that we are the sum of all our past experiences. She's just jumped off for a second, but that's all right. We'll get her back. That we are the sum of all our past experiences, and that everything has an impact, either, you know, positive or negative on us. And if we want to make change, if we want to really work on our healing, then it's so important for us to look within and to start to pay attention to our bodies, to notice these blockages. She's back.
I'm so sorry
Are you
about
there?
that. I think I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. I think it's unfortunately it's the Wi-Fi here where I live. I just switched it. I'm on data now, so it shouldn't be cutting out again.
And I don't think I told everyone, Charlotte's joining from Bali today. So that's pretty cool, right? Yay. Okay, please continue.
Yes. So what I wanted to say was that we also have to realize that how can we even imagine changing any kind of behavior that we have when we always do the same thing, and especially we have never been questioned what we do, and that could be done differently. Okay, so naturally, if I have lived my whole life wearing these glasses but with an orange filter on them, you telling me that you know that you're looking through life through orange lenses, right, is not going to help, because I'm going to say, I don't know what you're talking about. This is what the world looks like. So in a certain way, what we could say is that once we start to practice yoga, it's the rendezvous, it's the meeting, it's the opportunity for someone to say, you know that you have orange filters on your glasses, right? And then for us to say, oh, what happens if I take them off? Because basically it is an opportunity to begin to perceive and to feel your body differently to what you've been doing your whole life.
Massive. If you're willing, like, to look in, and not, because at that first sort of like, I remember when I first started practicing yoga and energy started to move, and I started to become less reactive, and there was this more time between what was triggering me to my response. Like, there was this pause of space almost, whereas the pre-yoga me would have just reacted, and probably in an aggressive or a low vibing response, and it would have been immediate. There was no space between what happened and my response. And I noticed once I started practicing yoga, I was more patient with people, and even more patient with myself. Like, I started to bring up all these sorts of things for me. And so that, I guess, is addictive when it's that sort of feeling. But then when it starts to bring up the not so positively charged things, I guess, is when people can start to shy away, because it's like, oh, I've got a sore hip, I can't come to yoga today. Oh, I've got a sore foot, I can't come. It's like, do you really have a sore foot or a headache, or were you too busy? Or is something starting to come up that you are not ready to process, that you thought you'd buried deep enough, that it was never going to come back? Is there something uncomfortable you're experiencing? I'm going to turn my speaker off, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's also, it's a little bit the same thing as all these people, that they know you teach yoga. And so whenever they see you, they feel a little bit guilty because they don't go to class. And so they have to say it to you. And then they say, I should really be doing yoga, but I'm just not flexible enough. Right. And it's so interesting, because they come up with all these reasons. And what they're feeling really is this charge coming to the surface of guilt, because they actually know that they could, but they don't really want to go into that uncomfortable position, right? And so in a certain way, I can't help by comparing that to running into therapeutical clients or patients, for instance, out in the street, and who will feel uncomfortable because there's someone there who's reflecting something back at them, because that's a little bit what it is, right? When the yoga student doesn't want to come to class because of a headache or whatever it might be, or you know, they just had to do something else that day. What happens is that the reason that they're telling you this as well is because you're reflecting back at them their own words that they know. And the reason they feel this way is because they know that they're making up excuses. Just like when I would run into a therapeutical patient, for instance, who will find all kinds of ways of not having to have an encounter, because it means something raw, actually, isn't it? There's something without the filters, something without the masks for a little bit, right? And so what happens very often is exactly what you're saying, is that people tend to drop out, right? They drop out and then they find all the reasons why yoga was not a good idea. But there's also, you know, all the ones who hurt themselves in yoga, right? And both you and I, we know about that as well, right? Been there, done
Very
that.
much. Very, very much so.
And one of the most difficult things to realize in that moment is that, is it yoga that hurt you? Or is it that yoga could never hurt you? Because it's actually you who hurt you, right? Because of what you were doing.
Right. And when we come
but
from
then that also...
Yeah, so awful when you're ready to take like responsibility for your actions, for your thoughts, and to realize that they are all interconnected, because the way we sort of approach our yoga practice, like we were talking about there, seems to be, it can flow onto our life as well, and it can be always in that mindset of it's not me, it's everyone else, or I couldn't do it because of XYZ. Like, we're constantly looking for excuses for the easy way out, or so that we can just go to the positive. And it's like, as soon as it becomes uncomfortable, it's like, oh, I couldn't make it, or it wasn't for me, or it wasn't this, or it wasn't that. When the truth is, it's like, that just makes me feel really uncomfortable to feel that emotion, and I don't want to feel embarrassed, or I don't want to feel, you know, that pain coming back up. So I'm just going to push it back down. I'm going to make some excuse as to why I can't come or why I can't do it, rather than address, you know, gently address the feeling that's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's so interesting, because then it becomes, you know, it's the teacher, right? Or it's that pose. How many have not said, you know, someone who practices yoga, especially if you practice it regularly, who's like, just have this love-hate relationship with one specific pose. And it's so interesting, because actually the pose is nothing. The pose is a medium. You know, it's all a medium. It is all the way to kind of tweak it in. How can I connect to something real that is going on here? And, you know, without going into details about it, some years back, I had an experience with one of the deeper, let's say, twists and hip opening poses in the Ashtanga primary series. And I was having problems with this pose. I hated this pose since many years, and I was in a very intensive practice. I was in 1 month with my teacher in India doing it every day. And I one day just was very open and raw after practice with this, and some things came to the surface that wasn't even things that I had forgotten or anything like that, but it's just I had not recognized the rejection of pain that I actually had linked to this pose of an event from many years before. And it just came up to the surface, and this fear of pain actually that was linked to a miscarriage many years ago. And I kid you not, when this came to the surface and I made the connection to myself in my mind, I promise you I have never had issues with that specific pose ever again. I just could do it again afterwards. And so it just means that, it just means that it is everything. It's like social media. Everything is a tool. It depends on what you do with it. And what you do with can only depend on your own personal perception.
Right.
But this is why bringing this perspective of psychology into the practice when we do the classes is so enriching and interesting. And everyone has their own personal experience when we're doing this. So even if, so the way I have done it, and we'll talk about this another time more in detail through what we'll be talking about later on. But as I found the chakra system and how this is a map kind of to the emotions and the thoughts in the body, it was just very interesting how you can link from the more Western perspective of psychoanalysis, really, but also psychotherapy. You can link what is happening in the body as we go to different parts of the body in the practice through this chakra system, and how amazing it is that the yogis, the chakra system have evolved many times in all kinds of ways. So what we're seeing today as the chakra system and what we link to it has nothing to do with the original ways of looking at it, but it's also evolved in so many ways. But if we would look into what we are used to anyway, and the different things that we associate with the different chakras, it is amazing how it's also mapping out life, actually. And so how we can then take that into the practice, and then it becomes something very personal. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't mean the same thing to everyone, because it's a personal experience.
I absolutely love that. I love the energy system and the chakras, and exactly like how we are all the same, as in we all have them, but all built up or made up so completely differently based on our experiences and based on what is stored, based on what is flowing optimally within us, and based on what is blocked. Like, so that when we have the opportunity to link like that awareness with our physical body, and bring that, what yoga is, I guess, the union of body, mind and soul, and we've got the option to bring that together, like in a safe space such as a yoga class or a yoga practice or a meditation, what we have the potential to unlock and uncover and learn about ourselves. And that, to me, it's phenomenal. It's mind blowing the way, with your background on psychology, that you can just weave in these questions or these like self-inquiries, that it's the same question for everyone, but depending on where it lands on us, will determine what unlocks, what we uncover, and what we do with it, more importantly. So do we just, I don't need to hear that one wasn't for me, or can we take it in and see where it lands in our body, and then like let it shine light on that, so that we can learn something, and we can grow, and we can heal ultimately.
Exactly. And I think, you don't even have to go too far into depth. Just anyone, you move around on your mat, whether you go to a yoga class, you just move around on your mat for 20 minutes and you lay down for relaxation to recover. Anyone will be able to tell you that whether it's something they label positive or negative, there will be a shift in how they're feeling. There will be a shift in how they're feeling physically, and it will be a shift in how they're feeling emotionally and mentally. So maybe someone will say, no, I don't notice, I'm in the same state I was, my mind is the same as before. And for sure, there are times when we are so, obsessed about something that yoga practice might not change that, but you will feel, oh, there's a little bit of coming out. But a physical sensation will still feel different, because you have moved, you have changed things in the body.
We can fight against it in our mind. Nope, I'm not different. Nope, I learned nothing. Nope, I don't feel any different. But we can't deny the energy.
Yeah.
That you, and you can feel two different ways, I guess. Like sometimes you leave feeling elated and lighter, and like something really has been cleared from you. But other practices, you can leave feeling like really triggered and really angry or frustrated or irritated. And I think people might sometimes think that's like a negative experience, because they're the emotions that we deem to be negative and not to be sort of delved into too much. But both of those experiences either light or heavy, are super profound and have the ability to, like, for deep self-inquiry if we're willing, right? Is that sort of along the right track of the energy?
Of course. You're 100% on the right track. Absolutely. Oh, of course, absolutely. And that in itself is quite interesting, how we have this tendency, of course, since always, to label the experience, to label it positive or negative. And it isn't actually, it's not. It's just that some of it brings up more discomfort, right? And I would even say it brings up discomfort, maybe not as much as we believe it does, because I think that we have been taught very early on that what we label as negative, well, other people feel uncomfortable when we express it. And so maybe even it's more a question of, I remember that this is not, this is uncomfortable for other people when I'm expressing it, so it's something negative. Because, well, Jimmy there, he had no issue expressing that he was hungry, and he wasn't happy about the fact that he wasn't being fed. And it's only if mommy would, for instance, say, oh, that's not good, you know, you shouldn't, you know, or whatever, just to take that example, that would then learn, oh, okay, this isn't good, right? So it's also interesting that we have these things coming up, and I don't feel good today after practice. And okay, so if I sit with that, what happens, you know? How can I understand something from the state that I came out of class today compared to yesterday, where I felt like butterflies and rainbows?
And I feel like the more willing you are and more wanting you are to uncover these things about yourself and learn about the energy and the connection, and I find almost now that I enjoy, or yeah, I guess enjoy would be the right word, the practices where I feel, you know, those other emotions that make the other people feel uncomfortable, or the heavy emotions. I actually, when I'm in the right frame of mind, of course, I feel better after those classes, because there I feel is like a real opportunity to grow. If I'm willing to sit with that uncomfort, with that pain, with that trauma, with that whatever is coming up for me, if I'm willing not to just be like, oh, that was way too much, let's push that down, block it off, let's just move on and hope that never comes back again. I find in the days when I'm a little bit more open to receiving that, that is when a real powerful shift can happen. Because when you have all the positive experience and everything's light and elated, it's very easy to have a good day and to be polite and to be compassionate and to be respectful and empathy for other people. But when you're feeling in more of those heavy emotions, it can be a more challenging place to be kinder to yourself and others, respectful and patient. So I find now that if you don't, like you said, label them, if they're not labeled as good and bad, because all emotions are valid and all are necessary, and just because we label them bad, or just because people have made us feel uncomfortable for having them, or society deems it to be uncomfortable, doesn't mean they're not going to exist within us. We just struggle more to deal with them when they arise. So we either have explosive, very inappropriate reactions, or we have nothing and just bury them deep. But just because we're doing that, they don't go away, do they?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's when you talk about that, Nikki, you're also touching then into another layer where we come into, okay, so in what way our yoga practice on a psychological level can help us to begin to actually, I want to say love ourselves, but why don't we even say accept ourselves, actually? Because all of those things that we have been labeling as negative, the reason that we label them negative is then because we have pushed them away and wanting to push them into a part of ourselves where no one can see them. And that's what we then in some terms can talk about, for instance, the shadow side of ourselves. So basically it's everything that we did that we were taught was not good, we pushed it away so that it wouldn't be seen. And so if we can then, through our yoga practice, when these emotions come to the surface, instead of keep pushing them down, but instead saying, okay, how can I coexist with this part of myself? And that really is the work of union as well.
I love that, coexist. And that has been such a massive one for me at the moment, or in the last few years, being diagnosed with PTSD and having suffered through the loss of our daughter. Now, with every experience, it is my happiness coexists with sadness. My love coexists with fear. Like in every emotion I feel now, there is always its opposite, that perfect word, coexisting with it, and to try and live with that and balance that is it can be extremely difficult. But having a practice like yoga where we can shift energy, where with your background in it, like weaving in those behavioral elements and those inquiry questions is more powerful. And I think I read it on your website somewhere, than like just sitting in the therapist chair. It's like taking this holistic approach to our healing and our well-being and our life, I guess, ultimately, and how we it all together to have the most whole and like wholesome approach, so that we can really live and not just live in like one tiny little aspect, numb to heaps of things and repressing heaps of others.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I guess there you go. There's like a little bit of a glimpse into what we mean when we take the psychologist perspective into the yoga practice, and then use this mapping of the chakra system as we go through the sequencing of a yoga class. Yeah.
So powerful. Charlotte, you are just, I could talk to you all day. I have felt that though from the minute I met you, but I do not remember that first meeting. I do not remember
This
that.
was
Yeah, that one has
it was at
completely
it was
escaped me.
at it was at the Chill House.
Oh my gosh, it was. I remember. Yes. It absolutely was. It absolutely was. Oh my God, you are phenomenal. You have been changing my life, or no, not changing. You have been helping me live and integrate life from that very, very moment. Like, you are just an absolute gift to this world with your knowledge. And I know that we wanted to talk more about chakras and barely even got into that topic today about energy and the mapping and what chakra represents, like what characteristic in us, and how we can use the knowledge of the chakra system to help us gain more perspective, which I guess maybe is not such a terrible thing that we didn't really get into that today, because Charlotte and I have an amazing 3-day workshop coming up in September. When I say Charlotte and I am a very loose term in that. So we are going to be learning from Charlotte over 3 days, her knowledge on the chakras. So day 1 will be the lower chakras, day 2 will be the heart, and day 3 will be the upper. So over these 3 days, we are going to be diving super deep into the chakras, like really getting down into the please explain, Charlotte. Sorry, before we go.
Well, thanks for that. Right. So basically, well, it's not loosely to say because you have a very interesting approach to this, which is why it's so interesting that we'll do this together. So basically, from both of our perspectives, both your way of working through the different essential oils, for instance, and from my perspective, then coming from the psychologist, we will actually work through the emotional centers of the body that the chakras can be. All right. And so we will talk about what it represents physically in the body, what we can do actually to focus on that specific chakra from different perspectives, whether it's from the asana practice, so the different poses, from the essential oils as well, and then from the psychological perspective to each and one of these ones. And so the reason that we've, because the lower chakras are also the really physical ones, where we can definitely work through. It's very much to do with the self-image, I would say, as well. So through the body and movement and touching and feeling. And then, of course, the fourth one, which is actually the heart chakra, or the bridge between the lower parts and the higher parts, if you will, or between the inside world and the outside world in a certain sense. And then we have the third day, where we will more go into this connection with a higher reality of ourselves as well. And you could almost even, if you want to, if you're into that kind of perspective, you can even take this into Maslow's pyramid, you know, with the basic needs that needs to be taken care of before we can really allow ourselves to go into what we would call self-realization, or self-actualization, actually, as well, in Maslow. And in the yogic perspective, that's actually what it is. The self-realization is when we come into the higher chakras. So yeah, that's coming up in September.
I know. I am so incredibly pumped for this. So during this 3-day workshop, we will send you out essential oil rollers so that we can use the benefit of smell, because our sense of smell is the only one that is tied to the emotional center of our brain. So using the scent of the specifically chosen essential oils to correlate with each chakra to help us unlock sort of energy pathways and emotions within the body. We'll be using those along with affirmations, along with Charlotte's incredibly in-depth knowledge about the chakras. So you'll have access to both of us throughout this workshop. There'll be live Zooms each night, so you can ask questions. You can submit questions earlier. If there's something that's burning on your mind that you want to know, you can ask us live. And also with this workshop, you'll gain access to Charlotte's Chakra Flow yoga classes. Incredible. So everything that we were just talking about before, like how the physical movement in your body, and if we are focusing it on one specific area of the body, so if we're talking about chakras, say the lower chakras in the lower areas of the body, using that practice with the awareness and the openness, I guess, in our mind, what we can unlock and discover, and why we can figure out like our behaviors, and if we are reactive, like if we are living from a conscious state or from an unconscious state, if we are living from a reactive state, from a responsive state. So you'll have access to these classes. There's over 2 hours, I think, is that right, Charlotte, of chakra flow classes?
Yes, well, each and one of the classes are around 35 to 45 minutes long. Yeah, so there's 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Perfect. So you will have access to that. We will post something about that anyway after this live. I think Jimmy has reached his capacity,
his limit. Yes,
I think.
Hi,
limit, and he has been so subtly trying to tell me. So I will express yourself, Jimmy. Exactly. We are all for it. Charlotte, thank you so much. My God, you are so incredibly talented and knowledgeable. Thank you. I am going to rewatch that because I want to write notes from it.
Thank you, Nikki.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. I'm so honored to know you.
Same here.
Oh, I just adore you. Okay, so I'm going to try and save this. It will be in my stories and in Charlotte's, and hopefully I can download it. So fingers crossed for me, guys. Fingers crossed.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too. Much love to the whole family, yeah?
Oh, thank you. Mwah. I'm going to let you first so that then my screen looks like it does when I normally do a live, and then I will see what happens after that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Charlotte.
See you.
My God. That was amazing. That was absolutely incredible. She is just so full of wisdom and easy digestible information, so that when you hear, for me personally, when I hear Charlotte's words, it's like, I don't know, these mind-blowing little pieces of information that just is so powerful for self-inquiry and for self-awareness, that Yeah. Oh my God. Amazing. I'm buzzing from that. I'm going to rewatch it because I want to write notes from that. I feel so honored that Charlotte was here to talk to me and to talk to us, to give her time to us. That is such a valuable commodity to have, and to gift us that, and her knowledge, so extremely valuable. So I'm going to try and hang up now. Hang up or stop the live, if that's what you call it. I think I just press the cross at the top, and then that will give me the option to download it. I'm hoping. Cross your fingers for me. Thank you so much for joining.